There is a leafy green vegetable so powerful and so easy to grow that the government made it a felony to plant it in many states. If you put this seed in your backyard, you are not just gardening, you are breaking federal law. Forget everything you know about gardening. In the United States, planting water spinach, just a leafy green you can eat for pennies, is not a hobby. It is a crime. Federal law puts water spinach, also called kong kong, on the same blacklist as some of the most dangerous invasive species on Earth. The official language is the phrase, noxious weed. The law is 7 CFR, section 360.200. That is not a suggestion. That is a federal regulation. Stamped in the Federal Register on March 20th, 2000, and it has not budged since. The USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, APHIS, is the muscle behind it. Their database entry is FNWD-2019-01. It is right there in black and white. Grow, sell, or even move water spinach across state lines, and you are looking at a federal misdemeanor. The penalty is up to $100,000 in fines, or a year in prison, for a plant. But the insanity does not stop there. More than a dozen states have their own bans, each one trying to outdo the next. California, up to $5,000 and 6 months behind bars. Texas, $2,000 to $10,000 and half a year in jail. New York, Class A misdemeanor, $10,000 a fine, 1 year in prison. Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, Oregon, Michigan, the list keeps going. Every state has its own set of handcuffs, its own threat hanging over anyone who dares to grow this so-called weed. Enforcement is no joke. The USDA can slap you with a quarantine order, seize your plants, destroy your seeds, or hit you with a civil injunction. State agriculture cops and even local sheriffs have raided homes, busted growers, dragged people into court, all for a vegetable that in most of Asia is a staple food. The law does not care if you are feeding your family or trying to save on groceries. No permit, no mercy. While supermarket greens are sprayed, packaged, and pushed at sky-high prices, water spinach, one of the cleanest, fastest growing foods on the planet, gets treated like a threat to national security. The message is clear. If you want to eat real, pesticide-free food grown in your own backyard, you are stepping into outlaw territory. The question is, who does this system really serve? Picture this. You, a bucket, and a handful of cuttings. That's all it takes. Water spinach doesn't need fancy soil, fertilizer, or a green thumb. Just stick a few stems in water. Any clean bucket will do. And in a week, you'll have crisp, green shoots ready to eat. 7 days. No waiting for a harvest season. No expensive grow lights. No endless trips to the garden center. Forget shelling out $4 for a limp bag of baby spinach. One do-it-yourself, hydroponic kit, about $30 for the bucket and tubing, and you're set for months. The plant regrows in 7 to 10 days, over and over, pumping out more food than most backyards ever see. University of Florida scientists tested homegrown water spinach for pesticides. Lab results: 0. Not a trace. Compare that to supermarket greens, spinach, lettuce, even so-called organic kale. The USDA's own reports show nearly a third of store-bought spinach samples are laced with chemical residues, and a portion of those exceed the legal limits. You think you're eating healthy? Think again. The system is rigged to keep you buying chemical-soaked greens, while the one plant that grows clean, fast, and free is treated like contraband. Do the math. A household that eats 200 grams of greens a week spends at least $25 a year on store spinach, more if you are buying organic. But a single bucket of water spinach can produce 5 kilograms a season, covering 30 weeks of meals for pennies. After the first setup, your food bill for greens is zero. You want organic? This is real organic. No sprays, no trucked-in produce, no mystery chemicals. Just water, sunlight, and a plant that refuses to quit. This is not just a gardening hack. It is a threat to everything Big Ag stands for. A plant that grows itself, does not need their chemicals, and feeds you for free? That is the nightmare scenario for anyone making money off your grocery bill. And that is exactly why the system wants it gone. Grow water spinach, and you are not just saving cash, you are breaking the rules of the food game. Dig through the paper trail from the late 1970s, and the truth jumps off the page. This was not some grassroots push to protect the waterways. This was a full-court press from the biggest names in agribusiness: Monsanto, DuPont, Dow, FMC, and BASF, all scrambling to keep their profits safe. Forget the official weed control story for a second. The real action was happening in smoke-filled committee rooms and backdoor meetings, where corporate lobbyists shoved piles of cash at lawmakers and hammered out the blueprint for a ban. Lobbying filings from 1976 to 1978 tell the story in black and white. Monsanto and DuPont each dropped up to $18,500, big money back then, targeting the Senate Agriculture Committee and the House Committee on Interior and Insular Affairs. Their stated goal was regulation of invasive aquatic plants, and more bluntly, promotion of herbicide-based control programs. Translation: get the government to call water spinach a menace, then sell the solution. It gets better. Memos released under the Freedom of Information Act from 1979 show USDA agency. Scientists actually debated letting people grow water spinach, but industry representatives from Monsanto and Dow were right there, pushing hard. One line from a Dow liaison says it all: chemical control is the most cost-effective method. Their next pitch was to get the federal government to label water spinach as a noxious weed, then force every state to buy up mountains of aquatic herbicides. That is not weed control. That is market creation straight from the memo. Senate hearing transcripts from 1976 even have DuPont's top agronomist spelling it out. A legal designation will expedite procurement and budgeting. In other words, slap a criminal label on a plant, and suddenly every government agency is a guaranteed customer. All this was greased by $45,000 in campaign cash shoveled to Senator Henry Jackson, the man whose legislation helped rewrite the Plant Protection Act in 1978, making it even easier to crack down. The result? A ban that protected nothing except Big Ag's bottom line, locking out a free food source so chemical giants could sell their version of protection for decades to come. The official story goes like this: water spinach is a menace. Supposedly, it chokes rivers, clogs canals, and threatens to turn America's waterways into a green swamp. That is the scare tactic. Paint it as a monster, then spend millions to keep it in check. But dig into the numbers, and the whole narrative starts to unravel fast. Let us start with the government's own playbook. A PHIS, the USDA Plant Police, labels water spinach as moderate risk, not high, not catastrophic, just moderate. That is straight out of their 2020 risk assessment. Compare that to real aquatic invaders like hydrilla, which get the high-risk stamp and actually cost millions in damages every year. Water spinach? It barely registers. In Florida, after decades of so-called infestations, the plant's biggest crime was popping up in a few man-made canals. University field studies found it never even escaped into natural marshes. Removal was not some epic battle either. The price tag was $1,200 an acre, mostly for yanking it out by hand. Not cheap, but nowhere near the disaster the bans make it out to be. Now look at the receipts. Since 2000, federal and state agencies have burned through roughly $12 million in taxpayer money on water spinach control programs, herbicide contracts, manual removals, and endless paperwork. That is $12 million spent fighting a vegetable that, by the government's own data, is not even a top-tier threat. Meanwhile, the same contracts keep landing in the laps of the chemical giants who lobbied for the ban in the first place. Monsanto, BASF, FMC. They are not just selling the problem, they are selling the solution. Peer-reviewed studies blow more holes in the scare story. Rogers and his team ran a meta-analysis in 2020 and found no evidence of water spinach wiping out native plants or wrecking biodiversity in the US. In fact, in places like Louisiana, it gets outcompeted by local species after a flood. In Asia, where it is farmed everywhere, it is not the rivers that are getting strangled. The invasive weed label in America is a cover, one that has padded the bottom line for chemical companies and justified millions in spending, all while blocking people from growing their own clean food. The risk was never the plant. The real threat is what happens when you start asking why the facts do not match the fear. In Asia, water spinach isn't some outlaw crop. It is breakfast, lunch, and dinner for hundreds of millions. Walk through a market in Manila, Bangkok, or Hanoi, and you will find piles of fresh kangkong, still dripping from the morning harvest, sold for pennies a bundle. In China alone, farmers crank out 1.2 million tons of the stuff every year. That is nearly $1 billion worth of food, not weed control. The Philippines moves 350,000 tons, and Vietnam 200,000. Even tiny street vendors in Thailand and Malaysia run through mountains of it every week. This isn't boutique health food for the rich. Kangkong is the people's green. In the Philippines, it is flash fried with garlic and soy sauce, adobong kangkong. In Vietnam, it is tossed in a wok with nothing but oil and chili, or dropped into noodle soup. Thai cooks hit it with oyster sauce, chilies, and basil for pad pak bung. In Malaysia, it lands in coconut curries. Chef Diana Luce in Manila calls it the everyday, affordable green that feeds families from the poorest neighborhoods to high-end restaurants. It is not a weed. It is a cultural staple. Governments in Asia are not trying to ban water spinach. They are funding it. The Philippine Department of Agriculture runs a sustainable water spinach program. China's agricultural extension gives out free seed kits. Vietnam's ministry is breeding new disease-resistant varieties. Why? Because this plant grows fast, needs almost nothing, and keeps people fed. The official stats do not lie. Water spinach is a backbone crop, a lifeline for small farmers, and a badge of food security across a continent. While the United States spends millions fighting it, Asia bets the farm on it. Lab coats and clipboards do not lie, and neither do the numbers coming out of the University of Illinois Food Science Lab. When water spinach goes under the microscope, the results are off the charts. Per 100 grams, you get 43 milligrams of vitamin C. That is nearly double what you would find in baby spinach. Iron, 2.7 milligrams, enough to put romaine lettuce and most supermarket greens to shame. Vitamin A, 4,100 micrograms, blowing past what you will get from a whole bowl of kale. And this is not just some hand-wavy nutrition label. Scientists used ICP-MS and HPLC, the same high-powered machines that bust supplement scams and catch food frauds, to break down every leaf and stem. The verdict, pound for pound, water spinach crushes the competition. This is the kind of green that makes dietitians do a double take. High in calcium, packed with protein, and loaded with antioxidants, without the baggage of oxalates you get from regular spinach. Quick blanch it, And you keep the good stuff while knocking out any bitterness. No need for fancy sprays or chemical washes. Just clean, honest nutrition. Now compare that to the limp, chemical-soaked greens lining grocery shelves. The USDA reports show baby spinach and kale coming in with pesticide residues in up to a third of samples. Water spinach, grown in nothing but water and sunlight, tests clean every single time. No hidden toxins, no surprise contaminants, just food that actually feeds you. This is not a weed. It is the superfood the system does not want you to have. No wonder people are going underground to get it. When the numbers look like this, the black market practically writes itself. Outlaw a vegetable and watch what happens. The crackdown didn't erase water spinach from American soil. It just drove it into the shadows. Forget backyard tomatoes. There is a hidden network of about 150 growers quietly pumping out fresh Kong Kong behind locked fences and blackout tarps. These aren't cartel kingpins. They're teachers, nurses, retirees, people who just want real food without a side of chemical sludge. The Green Gazette got their hands on court exhibits showing how the operation runs. Rain barrels and kiddie pools turn into hydroponic jungles. Bamboo stakes, netting, and cash-only deals. Online, listings for fresh Asian greens pop up on Etsy and Facebook, but it's all code for water spinach. Ethnic grocery stores take deliveries after hours with no invoices and no questions. This isn't small potatoes either. The underground market moves $2 to $3 million worth of greens a year, all under the government's nose. At the center is a network leader, never named, always moving, coordinating shipments, warning growers about raids, and keeping the supply alive. The system says criminal. The street says hero. Follow the money, and the real story comes into focus. The companies behind the ban aren't worried about a few backyard gardeners. They are protecting a cash machine. Public filings from the biggest chemical players, Monsanto, BASF, and FMC, show gross margins on aquatic herbicides running between 18 and 25% for years. That's not a side hustle. That's a profit engine fueled by government contracts. Every time a state bans water spinach, it locks in a guaranteed market for these so-called weed killers. Florida alone handed Corteva $1.2 million to spray canals. BASF pocketed $1.9 million in Texas for preventive control. The same names that lobbied for the ban now rake in millions from procurement deals, year after year. It's a closed loop. Outlaw the plant, then sell the solution. The margins are fat, the contracts keep coming, and the only losers are regular people who just want to grow their own food. This isn't about protecting rivers. It's about protecting revenue. Kick down the garden gate and cue the sirens. This is where the war on water spinach goes full tilt. March 2014, Los Angeles. SWAT and USDA agents stormed a backyard, rifles out, over a vegetable patch. The haul was 150 kilograms of fresh greens and a couple of bags of seeds. The crime was growing Kong Kong without a permit. The owner walked away with a $2,500 fine and 4 months of probation for salad. Fast forward to Houston, 2017. Undercover cops posed as buyers, busted an Asian grocery distributor, and seized 30 kilograms of water spinach. 3 people landed in county jail for half a year and received $5,000 fines each. Miami, 2020. Thermal drones, DEA, and state agriculture agents swarmed a warehouse, burned 200 kilograms of hydro-grown greens, and slapped the owner with a $10,000 penalty and 2 years of probation. New York, 2022. Operation Green Veil. FBI and state EnviroCops took down a secret ring supplying Asian restaurants. 5 people went down for felony trafficking and were sentenced to up to 3 years in prison. This is not fiction. These are court dockets, press releases, and shattered lives, all because someone tried to grow a vegetable cleaner than anything in the supermarket. The system will kick down your door to keep this plant off your plate. Right now, you can walk into a store and buy lettuce grown with toxic chemicals, but growing clean, free food in your backyard can get you raided. That's not safety. It's control. The crackdown isn't about weeds. It's about who profits when you stay dependent. When a vegetable threatens billion-dollar industries, the system shows its true face. So, who really benefits from keeping you powerless and hungry? Drop your thoughts below.